Stephanie Valinsky, Deputy Director at the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Reimagining Law. In each episode, we're bringing personal stories and practical tips of how legal professionals can continue to deliver efficient and effective services during the coronavirus pandemic. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Diana Uchiyama, who's the Executive Director of the Illinois Lawyers Assistance Program, also known as LAP. LAP works with lawyers, judges, and law students to get assistance with substance abuse, addiction, and mental health issues. In this episode, Dr. Diana and I will discuss lawyer well-being during the coronavirus pandemic. Dr. Diana, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So let's start with COVID-19. It's really obviously stirred up a lot of emotions in people. And as you know, lawyers, we typically feel like we need to have it all together and not show any emotion. So what would you consider to be typical feelings for lawyers to be experiencing during this pandemic? And also, why is it important for lawyers to accept and acknowledge these feelings?
Yeah, you know what? I can tell you what we're seeing and why it's happening. So currently, this pandemic is wreaking havoc on all of us, whether we have mental health issues or not, because of the uncertainty of not having experienced something similar to this. The generations that are alive now have never gone through a war, have never struggled with these unbelievable situational factors that are happening. And so everything is new and uncertain. So currently people are struggling with the ambiguity of safety, the uncertainty of how do I stay safe. There's this invisible virus that is surrounding us, but we don't know how to stay safe. Many people have the disease and don't even know it. And then there's this financial uncertainty. So some of our basic primitive needs are safety, basic need of safety, and then, of course, financial security. I think they said 16 point some million people have filed for unemployment. So there is not just basic safety needs that are impacting people's functionings, but this uncertain financial future. So what we see currently is high levels of anxiety, and even people with no anxiety disorders are feeling this unrelenting level of anxiety, depression, high levels of depression because people aren't in control of their environment or their circumstances. And we're getting a lot of people who are relapsing because they're socially isolated now. And while social isolation for some people isn't that difficult because they have connections with a lot of people, there are many people who don't have social connections to begin with. And so when you take away some of the scaffolding that keeps them together, support groups, and the opportunity to interact with people at work, there are some real heavy circumstances that lead people to feel alone and isolated.
So if a lawyer is thinking, I'm feeling all these things and I really shouldn't be feeling all of this, what kind of feelings would you say are appropriate at this time? You mentioned anxiety and depression, but what's, normal feelings you should be feeling during this time, and when should someone be concerned?
Yeah, I would say that even those that haven't been predisposed to mental health disorders, that situationally, there can be situational depression, situational anxiety, and I would say that most people are experiencing those things just due to the uncertainty. I can tell you that many of us were thrown into the social isolation with no notice, right? And so there wasn't a lot of preparation time, and so people felt very disorganized and discombobulated. And although, at first it felt like a snow day, yay, we get to stay home, I think the reality didn't really set in until midweek. So I'm hearing a lot of people who are telling me, I've never suffered from depression, I've never been anxious, I've never had interpersonal relationship issues. And so I would say it's more normal and normative now in this current state to have these overwhelming feelings, right? And the other thing we have to really take into account is we haven't had this much interpersonal family contact, if we've ever had it, and for long periods of time, right? Maybe in the initial stages of a relationship. So many adult children are moving home. You're with your significant other or partner who you see occasionally or, at night. And so now we're in these intensive environments with people that we love, but they can get on our nerves because we're not used to being around them all together. And it's like you do this dance until you get used to it. And I tell people all the time, transitions are terrible for every human being, right? And so we're never at our best. We're always having to adjust. And so we were forced into a transition, meaning we were forced to work at home. And then we had to kind of come up with a plan of how we were going to make this happen. And then we were forced to be in a home or an apartment or a small space with people who we haven't spent significant amount of time with, maybe for long periods of time. And so all of these transition things have been overwhelming and all at once and been very difficult for people to navigate. And like I say, we'll get to a place where this almost feels like a new sense of normal, right? As we're getting used to the situation. And then we'll have a transition period as we all return back to work and have different anxieties about how do I stay safe? Is my financial security still there? Will I be okay? And so there's going to be changes in our world that we can't even anticipate at this point, but we're starting to hear it on the news, right? It's never going back to normal. We're never going to feel the same. And, if you think of your parents, if they were in a war, or your grandparents, there were certain behaviors that changed in them substantially. Like you talk about people who stock up their pantry. Like I grew up with a mother who was in a war, and she always had our pantry stocked full. And it was like, what are we planning for? And I never understood that. And now, as I'm in a period where I just returned from the grocery store and people were loading up their carts as if food was never going to be delivered to the stores again, it's how people manage that anxiety. Hence the need for excessive amounts of toilet paper and paper towels and the fear of running out of basic things that we're used to.
So as we adapt to this new normal that you have mentioned, a big part of that is starting to be comfortable with uncertainty. And often, as you know, uncertainty, with that comes a lot of increased stress. So how can lawyers and judges best deal with this new normal?
Yeah. So the way to do it is to create internal structure into your day, meaning that despite the fact that we're working from home, there have to be kind of rules and boundaries related to family members, interrupting your workspace, having a workspace, right? So we have to recreate as close to what is needed in order to function optimally while we're working from home. So that means creating a space where you can be more productive, and setting an agenda for each day, each week, to try to stay as normal as possible. So that means, when we're in a work from home space, it's sometimes really difficult to end work or end home, or they morph into each other and we feel unproductive on all levels. So if you can get a set wake up time, put routine into your day, meaning from 8 to 10, I work on my most difficult project, and you set what that project is. And then you take a 15-minute break, as if you were at work going to Starbucks for a coffee. How you would do it, you would try to create it as close to the template you had as before. And then I would structure in a lunch period and then another back to work period, and to kind of create that. And then outside of work, you have to have an end time for work as well. And it's become very difficult for me. And I see that the world is kind of, there's been this ambiguity as when does work start, when does it end? But I'm only as good as I give myself restorative time as well. And so I've had to put limits on it as well. Otherwise, I'm no good to anyone else. So it's the same thing. It's not being available all the time. It's as if you leave work and then you enter your home life. And I would tell you to get outside as much as possible, even if it's just to sit in your backyard. I would tell you to incorporate some level of exercise into your day. I know health clubs are closed. I know that people feel a little bit out of sorts. But if you have a bicycle, you can take a bicycle ride, you can take a walk, or you can sit in your backyard and feel the sunshine on your face, because I think you have to leave your internal space to feel like you are connecting with the external world. And so creating those moments become really critical.
That really makes sense. When I was thinking about this yesterday, we're already at 4 weeks of being working at home, and I'm just starting to feel like I'm getting the routine down. So I appreciate that. In terms of those in the profession who are supervisors, managers, leaders at their firms and organizations, what would you say to them as to how best to support their employees during this time, since they're not together in the office anymore?
I think connection becomes critical. And, we're really fortunate in this day and age that we have the opportunity to Zoom, we have conferences, opportunities to connect via phone, via kind of a Zoom platform or a WebEx. And I think those become critical to creating, again, the template as close to what you did as before. So, for instance, here at LAP, we have a text chain that we're all on, and we text each other funny ha-has as if we were in like the office, doing the same kind of behaviors that we did, where we would make each other laugh as we pass by, and we try to recreate that as close to that as possible. We also have conference calls at least twice a week, and we're using a media platform like Zoom in order to see each other and feel connected to each other. I check in with people. My deputy director checks in with people. We talk to each other every day, so it doesn't feel so isolated and you don't feel so disconnected. And you're also ensuring that the people who work for you are still able to function as optimally as possible given these outrageous circumstances that we didn't really prepare for. So, I think in the first 2 weeks, I think every organization had to make adjustments, right? Did we have the capacity? Do we need a new laptop? Do we need a new microphone? And we were all playing this catch-up game to say, how do we do what we do and continue to do it in this really artificial kind of setting where we don't have the ability to interact personally. But thank God in this day and age, we have many opportunities to stay socially connected and for the sake of employment purposes as well.
So, as we know, LAP's done a great job of educating the community and the legal profession that substance abuse and mental health issues are typically higher in the legal profession than in the normal population. So, we talked about you getting calls about anxiety and depression. Are you also noticing an increase in calls to LAP in the past few weeks? And do you anticipate that mental health and substance use will increase because of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I would say that the first week this all happened, so we've been remote for about 3 weeks. You guys were 4 weeks because you had someone in your building. I remember that.
Right.
But for us, I think the first week was a little bit slower because not everyone was working remotely until that stay-at-home order came in. And then people were trying to figure out if they were essential or not. People weren't sure how their work life was going to be impacted. So the first week we were kind of in this lull. And then since then, we have like a high acuity, high risk population of people who are contacting us and in need of services. So as the increased social isolation and the ramifications took place, we saw more people having relapses, where depression, high levels of depression, strikingly high levels of anxiety, and an increase in suicidal thinking and ideation, which has been, we have at LAP have really worked hard to kind of minimize. And I think now that the economic toll and impact of this uncertain time increases, people are being laid off and furloughed and have no income sources coming in. And it's really hitting people tremendously hard. We've been utilizing our treatment assistance funds to put people into treatment because they no longer have access to funds to do it themselves. So I would tell you there's been an escalation in the past 2 weeks, with the lull being the first week, because I think everyone felt yay, 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 and didn't recognize how long this would take place. And now we're seeing people who have been able to manage some of their symptoms feeling like they're increasing as well. So we have a platform, HIPAA compliant telehealth platform. And I would say that I have been seeing more clients, as has Joe and Tony at our agency, than we have when we were in the office, because of the need to talk things out.
Okay, so since lab is already practicing social distancing with the telehealth that you just talked about, are you also able to do virtual consultations? Yes. I know you guys have a bunch of support groups. How has that evolved?
Yeah, so everything has evolved. So everything that we had at LAP is now virtual. So we have a HIPAA compliant telehealth platform that we got up and running pretty quickly. And it's critical for us, not just to hear someone's voice, but to physically see people, because you can sometimes see physical changes and deterioration in people. So it was really important for us to find the correct platform that we could actually have a similar encounter that we're having here. And then we got all of our groups up and running virtually as well. And they have been exploding. So we're seeing an increase in the outreach for groups as well. And, out of all bad things come good things. So we have this virtual health platform now that we can utilize in the future for downstate as well, so that people have access to the same kind of lab services should they want to utilize someone from the main lab office. And then we have our AA meetings also that have gone virtual. So everything's listed on our website. And everyone was scrambling. So the first week it was being placed together. And then by the second week, we had everything up and running. And that's been really helpful to many people who require the services on a regular basis.
If there are lawyers, judges, law students who want to take advantage of these services during this time, how can they go about doing that?
There's many ways to access LAP. Tony and I have a cell phone that you can always send us a cell phone text or make a phone call. My personal work cell phone is 630-642-9089. You can send me a text or call me, and our emails are listed on the website, and we also have a Get Helpline and a 1-800 line, so that we can access anyone who needs us. And people are really, I've been really impressed by the community of lawyers since this has all happened. I'm getting a lot of outreach where people are identifying people they're concerned about. One of the people on our staff is reaching out to members of the legal profession who have struggled in the past, who have utilized our services in an effort to say, are you guys okay? Do you need any services? And here's what we're doing. Because we want to make sure that people are safe. I got an anonymous email this week from someone who had seen someone post something that was pretty concerning. They sent me a screenshot of it. I reached out to the person, and it turned out to be someone who was in a high-risk population, who was socially isolated, who was very grateful that someone was concerned enough to call. And so I think we also have to recognize that even though we may be amongst other people ourselves, that there are many people who are by themselves and struggling and don't have access to other humans. And so it's really important, especially in this day and age, not just to think of the me part of the equation, but the we part, because we collectively know people who are lonely or could be socially isolated. And by reaching out to them, you can make a huge difference in saying, I care, do you need anything? Is there anything I can do for you? And that makes a huge, huge difference in many people's lives.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you guys do at LAP. It's definitely needed right now, even more than ever. And thank you for joining me today and taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you. And Stephanie, thanks for having me. And also I want to just say one last thing. If you currently are struggling and are afraid to outreach, don't be afraid. Just reach out. Let us help you. It's not a time to try to be courageous or brave. And it's okay if you're not functioning optimally to say, I need a little bit of help. And we're here for you.
So as we exit, please like and share this video with those who may benefit, and also subscribe to the Commission's channel to stay up to date on new episodes. Information on how to stay connected with the Commission and also Dr. Diana and LAP is in the notes. Thank you for watching.